Hey guys, it's your boy Ars back at it again with another video. As promised, dropping the second part of this video today. I wanted to make this sort of like a back-to-back thing. I have a bad habit of, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then I end up delaying for infinite years before I actually finish. So I'm trying to get this done as fast as possible for my own sake. I will say that if you do have any comments about anything that I say in this video that you disagree with, you are more than free to comment. I don't have any issues responding to comments. This is a discussion. That's literally the point. But I just want to let you know my opinions in this video are going to be significantly more inflammatory and less agreeable than my opinions in the other video. So I just want you guys to be braced for that because I do have some very unpopular opinions, but I will qualify them to the best of my ability without giving you a 1 hour dissertation on all of my points. Because to be honest, a lot of these discussions could be expanded upon further for several hours, but I'm not getting paid to do that, so I'm not going to do that. So going into what we were going to be talking about today, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is HP inflation. That is something that has popped up and has been a major point of conversation within the past couple of months, understandably so. But I'm going to be real with you. I don't care. I already know this. Some of you guys might be already preparing, like, wait, hold on. And you're already typing on your keyboards. Give me a second. I'm going to explain why I don't care and why I don't believe it's nearly as bad as the GHEC is making it out to be. The reason why I say this is because perspective matters. One of my primary points in my other video is that the glass half empty community takes the worst parts of scenarios and completely forgets the other side of the argument. They forget the other context. The reason why I don't care is because even though HP inflation has gone up, I already expected that to happen, and most players should have expected that to happen. You might say, why is that? Why would we expect that? Because that is literally the trend in virtually every gacha game ever. Knowing that trend, we, the players, should have been preparing for it. Could you argue that it's been happening a bit too fast? Sure. I would also disagree with that point. The reason being is that even though HP inflation has, quote unquote, gotten worse over the past 6 months to a year, we're ignoring the fact that simultaneously older content has become massively easier than before. That's the first thing. And the second thing is we have become massively stronger than before. The majority of the HP inflation that people are referring to is at the very ends of in-game content. The very ends. A lot of the people that complain about this HP inflation, more times than not, are free-to-plays and low spenders. For some reason, and this is just from what I've seen, from what I've observed, they have some insane notion that they should be able to comfortably clear the highest in-game content with sometimes the most poorly invested accounts you've ever seen. Did you fellas unironically believe that the in-game content was supposed to be easy or something? For me, who's been playing the game since day one, I didn't get a chance to even clear Mach 10, and I had to do it with literally like 10 cycles exactly 3 months into the game. So the reason why HP inflation appears to be a big problem now is because people are not taking the time to actually get to the level where that HP inflation will seem irrelevant. To me, it's irrelevant because I've been able to zero cycle content and even do stuff sustainless up in the highest levels of content myself without having to spend a single cent. I'm going to be dropping a video showing you a completely sustainless, free to play clear because I've been playing for so long. It's going to be rather difficult for people to wrap their minds around the fact that, unfortunately, Developers have to sell characters. It's their business. So, in order to match the power level that they're granting us, they're going to have to increase the HP inflation so that people are not just breezing through content within the first 3 to 6 months of the game. You may not remember this if you were a newer player, but us older players, when the game first came out, we beat the overwhelming majority of the content within the first 3 to 6 months. Them giving us all this content now while simultaneously increasing the difficulty, from my perspective, is to get us to slow down and take our time with the content. Have people forgotten all the time, the additional time that we were given to complete these in-game modes that we did not have before? Even modes like Simulated Universe, which are basically like, if you got unlucky, you're just out of luck. You now have restarts in case you make mistakes. Even Memory of Chaos got easier because they changed the way that restarts work. You may not remember, but I remember that when you were to restart at the second phase of Memory of Chaos, you had to restart the entire Memory of Chaos, even if you perfected the first half. Now, because of their improved quality of life changes, if you restart, you only restart on the half that you completed or that you're working on. Of course, this context, which lets everybody know that the game, while it's gotten harder, has gotten easier in a lot of ways, is always omitted in these conversations. I wonder why. It's almost like if you make everything out to be super bad and super dramatic, it'll make people talk more about the conversation, which equals more views and more clicks for certain content creators. So even though the content is harder than it's ever been, it's also more forgiving than it's ever been. Another reason why HP inflation has gotten so bad, from my perspective, is that we, the player base, have gotten massively better. It is unfathomable how much we've improved over the lifespan of this game. Have you seen the insane creativity of players in this community? When you get to a point when people are coming up with ways to clear your content that you never even thought of before, from a developer perspective, you sort of put yourself in a hole because they end up having to do one of two things. They either have to slow down how fast they're giving us power, or B, they have to increase the strength of the enemies in order to match the power and experience that we're gaining. The developers are going to have to create characters that are really powerful in order to make money because that's their fucking job. That's what they have to do. Right? So the only other option they have is to increase the HP of the bosses that are put into the game. Just a reminder, they did try to sidestep this HP inflation. They did. How do I know that? Because they were coming up with creative new bosses in Pentaconi. And people complained about even that. Did people forget about the death boss? Remember how it can essentially just completely ignores your defense, your HP, and could just take one of your character's souls and make them unavailable for battle. Really cool concept, right? That boss was a problem for literally one version. And then people immediately came up with foolproof ways of deleting that boss. One version. That was it. That's all people needed. Ever since that boss came out, the fear that I used to have of that boss dissipated. Gone. Every time that it's shown up, I've come up with creative ways of zero cycling it. Not a problem for me. They did the same thing with Aventurine. You guys remember Aventurine? Do you guys remember that when Aventurine came out, people complained about him being too strong? And they nerfed him immediately? People were like, oh, the content is getting a getting a bit easy, stale. Then they drop a boss that has a gambling mechanic, gambling within gambling, where it's not necessarily just about the HP of the boss, but timing your breaking of the enemy so that you can avoid the gambling stages. Or if you get stuck in the gambling stages, you have the team to get out of it and come away as the victor. People hated the boss. So from the developer perspective, I can imagine them thinking a little bit like this. So we come up with creative bosses. We came up with one. People figured out how to get around that very easily. And then we create another boss that is basically says, forget HP. You got to play around my mechanics or you're not winning. And people complain. What's the alternative? It is very easy to have a knee-jerk reaction and complain, but it's even harder to put yourself in the shoes of the developers and trying to come up with a solution to the problem. Of course, you could argue it could be slower. Like I already said, that's true. But when we're getting as powerful as we are, the HP inflation seems like the only way to keep us challenged in this game. The characters that we have in this game that we didn't have when the game came out are insanely overpowered. I have become so powerful that the bosses that you should be seeing in the background, because I ended up recording some gameplay just to prove a point, like Sokolia, Fantilia, all of these bosses that used to be a threat when the game came out and up to a year ago are no longer a problem. It used to take me 3 to 5 minutes to clear these bosses. Now, more times than not, I can clear them in less than 2. Not only that, in order to make sure that free-to-play players actually are able to do something with the difficulty spike of the game, they have given us OP free characters. Did we forget? We got the Broken Harmony main character form that literally defined an entire meta. That people forget about that. Just as a little reminder, in no mainline Hoyoverse game has a main character been released for free that has changed the entire meta of a game. So in this game, we got a free, broken, meta-defining unit that anybody can get with every single Eidolon just for playing the game. Before that, who did we get? A free Dr. Ratio. Interesting. Then they dropped us a 4-star, names Mose, wonder if you heard of him, goes perfectly with him. You get Robin, you get Aventurine, you're good. You don't even need Aventurine. You just get Robin, Mose, and you already have your free ratio. You can use that. Then they gave us a free imaginary March 7th. A character that literally allows you to play her in 2 different ways. You can either use her as a break support, or you can just use her as a follow-up damage support. The developers have given us so many tools, so many quality of life changes to combat the difficulty spikes in the game, and people either forget about those things or they don't use them. Again, doesn't take you much effort to find examples of this. I saw this almost immediately after some of these characters came out. Example, I go on HoYoLab. I'm going through the discussions because the stuff just pops in my face when I get on the app. I'm going to see stuff that I don't like, whether I like it or not. One of the people said, here's my polling plans. In their polling plans, they for some reason included imaginary March 7th. Does that make sense to you? Nope. Doesn't make sense to me either. Didn't make sense to the commenters. So somebody very kindly reminded them, you don't have to pull for her. So what are you waffling about? Their explanation goes like the following. The character doesn't interest me, so I'm not going to bother getting their limited Eidolons, and I'm not going to build them, and I'm not going to use them. So let me get this straight. The developers gives you broken free characters, or at the very least, strong free characters. Those characters are either not used by the player base, or they're undermined by the player base. There was a whole separate drama months ago where people were saying that Dr. Ratio was quote unquote trash because Acheron came out. The argument was that Ratio was overhyped and that after Acheron came out, he was essentially pointless to build. So people will not take advantage of the tools they're given, then complain about difficulty spikes when those characters were given to them to manage those difficulty spikes. I could go further, I could go in more detail, but I'm not going to. I'll end with this. Not saying that HP inflation is not real or is not a concern. Not going to make that argument. What I'm saying is that the developers gave us the tools and the quality of life changes to battle the difficulty spikes and the HP inflation. They could have handled it differently. They tried. They gave us the tools. They gave us different bosses. People complain no matter what they do. For that reason, me personally, do not see HP inflation as a problem. You could objectively argue that it is a problem, but from my perspective, based off of the points that I've given you, the information that I've given you, it is not nearly as big of a problem as everyone is making it out to be. Now I'm moving on to the next part of this conversation, which is going to be regarding none other than design creep and power creep. This is something that has been actively discussed and argued about in the community ever since the game came out, damn near, and is something that has been elaborated on, it seems like ad infinitum. However, I do believe that I can add some additional context to this conversation that has been omitted. And of course, I do know that power creep and design creep are indeed a thing that occurs in this game. But as I've already elucidated with my previous points and other parts of the video, as you can imagine, I don't care. For those listening, you might have issues imagining why that might be. And just like I spoke about in the HP inflation part of this video, the reason why it doesn't bother me is because I wasn't surprised by it. I was prepared for it. I was aware that my older characters were going to eventually get power crept. That's the reason why when I was pulling and why when I was planning for my account, I was trying to select characters that were as future proof as humanly possible. Because just like in every gacha game known to man, characters are going to get power crept. It is unavoidable. It is just a fact of life. That's what happens when you play games like this. Could you argue that it has been happening relatively quickly? 100%. But an important thing to remember, because we gotta have context, perspective does matter. Older characters are getting buffed by new supports. It happens every patch. They are either getting buffed by newer supports or by newer equipment. Is this something that is regularly talked about by the GHEC? No, of course it's not, because everyone always looks at things in a very black and white manner. So let's put this into context. Let's actually start listing some of these older characters that have been getting buffed either via new supports or via new equipment since the game has come out. Of course, the most popular example right now is none other than Genuine. Since Sunday has come out, he went from being basically like a tier 2 character to tier 0. Insanely strong. But in order to keep this for my free to plays, for my low spenders, we're not going to talk about limited 5 stars. DPS wise anyway. We're going to talk about free to play options, DPS options that are not commonly discussed, because the primary focus, it seems like in a lot of these conversations, is always 5-star DPSs that are limited. Clara, who was a follow-up character, the first of her kind to be able to consistently follow up. I know there were others, but she was the first of her kind to be able to consistently follow up. Got buffed by Robin, got buffed by Huowo as well, got buffed by Lynx, recently got buffed with Aventurine as well, who enables Clara to hit even harder. You have Ratio, who obviously was given to us for free, buffed by Robin, Aventurine, Mose, 4-star Herta, who I loved when the game came out, but I dropped her because I didn't think that there was a point in building her at that time, has now also become a staple for my teams because she's good against enemies that have a lot of ads, that have a lot of HP. She's gotten buffed via Jade, Robin, New Relics, Zhuyi. She is if not one of the best free-to-play 4-star options in the game. Before she came out, a lot of people were thinking she was going to be trash. They were like, a Quantum Destruction 4-star? That's got to be trash. There's no way that's going to be good. Now she can be played in a multitude of different ways. Just like Imaginary March 7th, you can either use her in a break format, or you can use her in a follow-up format. So she's good with Jade. She's good with Robin. She's good with Fugue, Ron May, Sunday, Gallagher, Imaginary March 7th, Mose. She was Acheron before Acheron came out. She's still good. She's only gotten better with time, aging like fine wine. Who else is aged like fine wine? None other than Himiko. I remember when I first got her, I always thought that she was solid. She was just missing some pieces. But a lot of people in the community wrote her off, thinking she was not salvageable. Now she is considered one of, if not the best standard banner DPS in the game. Also buffed by Jade. Also buffed by Ron May. Also buffed by Fugue, Sunday, Robin, Mose, Gallagher. Imaginary March 7th in some cases. And of course, you might notice that I'm bringing up older, power-crept DPS. You might be thinking, well, what about the broken supports that have come out that have power-crept the old ones? The ones that we have to keep pulling on. Well, as a free-to-play or a low spender, those are the characters you're supposed to prioritize. Have you ever heard the saying, DPSs are temporary, but supports are eternal? There is a real reason why that saying exists. DPSs will always come and go, but when you pull for the best supports that accentuate your account, that allows you to keep up in the game when your DPSs inevitably lose value. Pulling the correct supports also saves you resources because you don't have to keep pulling for all the new DPS that keep coming out. Don't get lost in the sauce and think you need to pull every DPS or support in the game to be able to comfortably clear content. To reference myself,
I have skipped over half of the limited characters that have come out, and I will skip even more. I don't care how broken or OP they are. If I know that I don't need them because what I have is sufficient, I'm not bothering with them. Period. The developers can drop 12 new characters next patch. I don't give a shit. I'm not pulling for all of them. I can't pull for all of them, and I don't need to pull for all of them. What has allowed me to continue to use the same 4 stars and 5 stars that I love using are honestly only because of 4 limited supports. Just 4. Ron May, Robin, and most recently Sunday and Fugue. If you go through my Memory of Chaos videos, you'll notice that after those characters came out, they're in like every single one of my teams. Those characters are in every single one of my teams, most specifically Ron May and Robin. Because ultimately, in a lot of cases, you only really need 2 characters for sustain and 2 characters to support your damage. For me, it is Fu Xuan and Luocha. Those are my 2 limiteds. And then for my Harmony supports, or just supporters in general, it's Ron May and Robin. Anything else I pull for is legitimately just to win more, to make it even easier for myself. But that's all I've needed this entire time. And then once Sunday and Feud came out, I was like, I might as well just add those to my account to make my life even easier. Even supporters like Bronya, despite being outclassed by Sunday, still got buffed by his relic set. And to this day, can still be used with every character that I listed and still be a high level support. How do I know? I 0-cycled Mach 12 with her. I'm going to show you me doing exactly that with Fei Xiao. Because even though Sunday is better than her, there's one issue that Sunday has with characters like Fei Xiao and Acheron. They don't use energy. So even though he's strong and can buff them, I would prefer to use Bronya because I don't have to worry about them not gaining an advantage of my Sunday. Bronya can be used with effectively anybody, even limited supports. Not even including the characters, we've also gotten new modes that have allowed older characters to shine. We got Pure Fiction. We got Apoc Shadow. We don't even know if they're going to add additional in-game modes or expand upon our in-game modes even further, because they've already done that. They've already expanded upon Simulated Universe. They already expanded upon Pure Fiction. They're most likely going to expand upon Apoc Shadow. And our older characters are going to continue to age like fine wine. Of course, there are characters in the game that need support immediately. I'm not going to argue against that. Characters like Kafka, as an example, needs to be the dot path needs to be buffed. Characters like Arlon, that is like sitting in the back, can't really do anything with them. I get it. But the developers are trying to make older characters relevant. They really are. You just have to pay attention to the characters that best support your account. If the only thing that you're focused on is the number of characters that are coming out, and you complaining, I can't pull all these characters, you're not supposed to. No one said you were supposed to. If you do not have the self-control to know what characters you should pull for and what characters you shouldn't be pulling for, this is not the correct game for you. Because you're going to get overwhelmed with the options, and you're going to end up making decisions that you regret. You have to be able to think carefully and plan carefully in order to use the characters that you have to the most optimal level that you can without being forced to pull every single patch. If that's not something that you can understand, then you're not going to understand my position here as to why I don't care about power creep or design creep. And you're most likely going to be angry in the comment section, in which go right ahead. It makes absolutely no difference to me whatsoever. But I'm just telling you, while power creep and design creep are real things, if you, while playing this game, have not been thinking about the pieces that you know that you need on your account in order to make the characters that you like better, and you are just distracted by the shiny new 5 stars that are coming out, that is your problem. You are only exacerbating a problem that was already inevitable because you cannot properly plan. You cannot properly make decisions necessary to make your account future proof. If I can do it, anybody can do it. But because I do not like just talking at you and lecturing you, I'm actually going to show you the ways that you can think about preparing your accounts, building your accounts. I've already discussed that in a previous video. One of my other videos, I talked about my 1 year review of my account, and I already elucidated to my planning. I talked about all of that. I showed you my polling history and everything. So if you want to go back and watch that, you can. But I'll talk about it again, and I'll keep talking about it over and over and over and over and over again until people understand. I want people to understand that there is a proper way to plan. There is a proper way to build your account so that even when your characters get power crept, they can still remain relevant and you can still make them strong. Because if you don't understand that, all you're going to be seeing from your perspective is that your characters are getting weaker, and that if you don't pull for the new meta characters, if you don't pull for the new meta DPS, you can't do anything. You're not going to be able to properly clear the content. I think that's a good enough spot to stop this section of the video, and we're going to move on to the next one where we're going to be talking about, I can't believe I'm saying this, 4 stars. Because why not? So the last section of this video is going to be a bit odd because I didn't initially plan on talking about this topic at all. The only reason why I did is because I saw it pop back up in the conversation. This was something that was brought up last year towards the beginning of the year where people were complaining about a lack of 4 stars. They dropped a bunch of strong 4 stars, but for some reason, the conversation about 4 stars has kicked back up again. I guess because there hasn't been a focus on any new 4 stars. And sort of my response regarding that criticism is sheer confusion. Really. This is of all the points that I've addressed, most of them are understandable. I get the perspective. It makes sense to me. This is the only one that I can't wrap my mind around. The reason being is, as I've already mentioned repeatedly thus far, I'm like a broken record at this point. We got free Imaginary March 7th, who's broken, and you can literally play her in 2 different ways. So she's basically 2 characters in one, and you can get all of her Eidolons for free just by playing the game. We have Gallagher, who is strong as hell, super meta. Even by Pride Win standards, he's like tier 0.5. He can be used on a multitude of different teams. I've even used him with Fei Xiao, even though he's not meant for follow-up teams, just because he can attack 3 times in a turn. Mose is also absurdly strong. Absurdly strong. Of all the 4 stars in the game right now, Mose is unironically my favorite just because of how stupid he is and the things that he can accomplish that I don't think a lot of players have really explored. He's a very unexplored 4-star. I'm going to show that as well in my Memory of Chaos runs. But even outside of those 3, a lot of the 4-stars that we do have that are getting buffed via new supports are essentially becoming new characters. We got GHEC, we already talked about that, who is basically a 4-star Acheron. Got buffed by Ron May, got buffed by recently Fugue. Su Shang has gotten buffed a lot recently because she is partially a break DPS. She breaks very, very quickly, very, very easily. I showed her cooking enemies at the highest levels of Memory of Chaos, and I'm sure that I'll put some gameplay in the background of me doing exactly just that, just so you guys know that I'm not bullshitting on that. Of course, Herta got buffed as well, but we already talked about her in the previous section, so I'm not going to go over that again. QQ, which weirdly enough hasn't really been discussed by a lot of content creators or players alike. The only person that I've even seen have the audacity to even attempt to keep them in the meta conversation is Mr. Pokey. Even though I'm sure that he's only plays with QQ ironically and for the content, he ironically is the only person that is keeping her in conversation. Luca, weirdly enough, got buffed by all the break supports despite being a dodge support because just like Su Shang, he can break very easily. Luca can do like 50 to 60,000 on dots, which is really good for a free-to-play player if you're just coming into the game and you see your enemies getting cooked for 50,000 HP by just being their turn. Obviously, that has value. Even Serval has piqued the interest of some content creators and players due to the fact that she has been indirectly buffed by all these new supports as well. 4-star Ting Yun is still strong as hell to this very day and only continues to get better as long as the energy requirements for characters continues to increase. So I would like to emphasize that a lot of the 4-stars that we have already are supported by not only the DPSs, but they're supported by new relic sets and new light cones that again make them basically completely different characters. Instead of people trying those characters and trying different combinations to try their less used characters, they just apparently just want shiny new toys. I would like to remind you that right now, even if we don't include the preservation form of March 7th, if we just include March 7th as one character, we have 22 4-stars, the overwhelming majority of which players do not use. They just don't use them. The developers, of course, could release more of them, but why would they when players are not even bothering to go back to the old 4-stars that have gotten buffed already to try to use them? It's a legitimate question. You get to the point where they have come up with so many different unique characters that it's hard to come up with new 4-stars because there are so many 4-stars that do so much. GHEC does so much now. Mose does a lot. So why release more 4-stars when the majority of people are just going to end up benching them in 6 months? 4-stars are supposed to be used to supplement the 5-stars that you have. They're not meant to, on their own, carry you throughout the entire game. The understanding, at least I thought it was an implicit understanding, was that you use the 4-stars that you have on your account until you can get a 5-star improvement, and then you pull them. The developers do that, obviously, as a model to compel people to pull. If they're not making interesting characters for you to pull, your interest is going to wane in the game. And if they make 4 stars too powerful, and those theoretical 4-star kits could have gone to a 5-star kit, they lose money. From my perspective, the characters that they've already given insane kits to arguably might have already cost them some money. Me personally, even though I know that people are super gassed about the new 5-star characters, right? Linksha as an example. I am never pulling for that character. Don't need her. Don't care about her. I got Luocha. I got Gallagher. I'm good. Is her damage insane? 1000%. I don't care. I can literally zero cycle without her. My DPSs are good. My supports are good. Not interested in her. But, to be fair, there is counterpoint to what I'm stating, obviously. The old supports could be a bit better. For example, they could be closer to pseudo 5-stars like Imaginary March 7th. But my counterpoint is, as I have basically been alluding to the entire time that I've been talking during this video, is that the new 4-stars are pseudo 5-stars already. And if old 4-stars were put on the same level as old 5-stars after being buffed, then people will complain about the new 5-stars that aren't getting much of an upgrade over the old ones. We have already seen what happens when you make 4-stars, too many 4-stars that are too strong. It's called the Power 5 of Genshin Impact. It's not a hypothetical. We've already seen it. The characters are so strong in that game that came out in their first version. Those characters are so strong that they have maintained relevancy in the meta to this very day. Sounds fun, except that they are better than some of the limited 5-stars in that game. So, we should be glad that the old 4-stars are not only getting improvements over time, but new 4-stars are unironically very viable in today's meta. Tingyun, still nuts. Imagining March 7th, OP. Jui, she keeps getting better over time. Moles helps with zero cycles and sustainless runs left and right. Gallagher is OP. How about we explore the 4-stars fully that we already have, that we don't use, instead of complaining about new toys to play with? You're still not on the same page. I'm going to try one more time to give you one more point. Just so that you are aware that not including standard characters, we have 29 limited 5-stars. One of which was given to us for free. So, if we exclude all the free main character forms, standard banner characters, in which we get 3 of them for free, 2 of which are your choice, and the additional March 7th form, 43% of the roster are 4-stars. You can count for yourself 43%, which of course are all free. They give us 4-star selectors. You can buy them from the store. You can pull them on banners. If you include the main character forms, almost half the characters in the game are free. And on top of all that, we have gotten 4 or 5 4-star selectors over the span of the game's release, and they're only going to continue to drop more. If you still, after everything I've just said, still think we need more 4-stars, I disagree. I think it'll completely dilute the pool that we already have. I think having a strong core of 22 4-stars that only have the potential to keep getting better is fine. It's fine. Now, is every single one of them viable right now? Absolutely not. Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you, all right? I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, characters like Arlen, he's like under the sea. Like, there's nothing you can do to save that guy, right? Until they come out with an HP support. But hey, Trivia's coming out. We don't know what the heck she does. But of course, hey man, somebody may decide not to pull for Tribby because she's a 4-letter word. I don't want to say it because I don't want to get canceled. So they're most likely going to drop new characters that are going to support the 4-stars. They've already shown that they can do that. So I am not concerned about any new 4-stars that's going to further dilute the pool. Now, dropping too many 5-stars will also cause a similar effect, but that doesn't mean that you dilute it even further by adding 4-stars that the overwhelming majority of players are not going to use, they're not going to explore, and they're not going to build. Or they are going to build them and then drop them almost immediately. That's my perspective on that. And before we get to the end of the video, I just want to wrap this up and end the video on this. Do you guys remember when the Honkai Star Rail community was brazenly one of the most arrogant yet supportive communities in the space? Remember when we used to go, Genshin could never? I miss that, man. I miss that energy. Now it feels like half the time I'm looking at HSR related content, somebody is fucking complaining about something. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna make another video after this one because now we're getting into a conversation about quote unquote predatory practices because they're adding more reruns more often. Yep, that's a problem now. And Genshin, there are characters that haven't run in over 300 days. 300. The reason why Genshin is even relevant in this conversation is not only because the HSR devs listened to the complaints of Genshin players and implemented that feedback into Honkai Star Rail, but because a lot of Honkai Star Rail players were originally Genshin Impact players and quit that game because of Honkai Star Rail. The developers are like, we don't want to end up on that path. We're going to drop the best supports in the game every 120 days. That way, new players coming into the game don't miss out on these super overpowered supports and DPS. That's predatory. So I'm going to make a video reacting to debates about that. Well, not debates, a debate about that I'm interested in. You can probably guess who I'm going to be talking about because both of those creators are at the end of my first part of this video, and I like both of their content. So that should be all the hints you need. But I want to, before we end the video, I want you guys, and I want the glass half empty community to remember what we have gained in this game. They seem to have forgotten all the things that the developers have done for us, the players, that has allowed me to remain free to play to this very day, and has allowed a lot of other players to remain free to play to this very day. So let's talk about it. Let's talk facts. First off, free beginners 5-star banner. Not in Genshin Impact. We can farm anytime we want, however we want, effortlessly due to easy replays, 60 Trailblaze power runs, and auto battling. Also not in Genshin. We have virtually free and unlimited synthesis / conversion of traces and upgrade materials as soon as you start the game to make it easier to upgrade the characters that you want. Virtually free and unlimited synthesis / conversion of any character upgrade materials as soon as you start the game. Massively easier dailies that can be completed in 15 minutes or less. And a lot of mainstream gacha games have also followed suit as a result. We've gotten increased Trailblaze power, which is going to be increased again, and allowing the overflow of Trailblaze power. Genshin players had to wait 3 versions before they got an increase in resin, whereas we got an increase in Trailblaze power within the first version, and we're getting another increase in 3.0. HSR was one of the first mainstream gacha games that has a standard banner selector, something Genshin still doesn't have. And most gacha games don't have that either. One of the first mainstream gacha games that normalized giving out free limited 5 stars and giving us a free standard banner selector. Genshin doesn't have that, and Wuthering Waves sort of followed in HSR's footsteps by giving out a free 5-star character. We have event reprisals, in which new players can go through past events and get old rewards. Genshin doesn't have that. A lot of people complained about that in that game. And most gachas don't have that. You miss an event, sucks. You're not going to get to experience it. Not going to be able to get the rewards either. We can farm pseudo 5-star light cones or weapons and get old free 4 stars through Herta Store and the new Pure Fiction and Memory of Chaos store. I counted, there's 20 plus in total. Most gacha games do not have this feature. We have 4 in-game modes, and these modes only keep expanding and improving with time. We've received several increases to the rewards that we received for completing said in-game modes. We get 10 free pulls with every new version. We get 5 standard and 5 limited pulls every month from the store. We have 4 areas / planets to explore, with a new one on the way within 2 years, and those areas are constantly expanding. Our main character keeps getting better and better forms that are actually meta defining instead of being cheap add-ons in order to please free-to-play players. It started off where the first 2 forms were kind of mid or just straight up bad. Then they just came out of nowhere with Harmony main character. Really insane. And then Remembrance main character is also going to be insane. They're constantly expanding the roster of relics and characters that not only allows new characters to be played in a versatile manner, but older characters are constantly getting indirect buffs from those as well. We have self-modeling resin that allows players to get the main stat they want on relics. And they're expanding that system so that we can not only customize the substats, but reroll substats as well. Genshin still doesn't have that. We have an upcoming collaboration with Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. I could keep going on and on and on and on. There are so many positives that we have gained from this game, which is the reason why I am loath to just throw the developers under the bus and complain about all these issues while failing to acknowledge all the positives that we've gotten out of this game. I can only speak for myself, but I at no level was expecting this game to be as enjoyable as it has been for me in the past year and a half. I didn't expect that I was going to like this game as much as I do. I wasn't expecting to stick around on this game as much as I have, and I honestly wasn't expecting myself to be free to play as long as I have been. And I'm most likely going to continue to be free to play because not only is being free to play fun, it's also challenging. It makes me want to keep playing the game. I think that the game's future is legitimately bright. I'm looking forward to the new version. I'm not sure who I'm going to pull for, but it's most likely going to be My Day, Castor Rice, and or Finon. Those characters look very interesting to me. And I just think it's time to cut down on the doom posting a little bit. Don't you guys think so? The game, like any game, can be improved. But looking at the negatives while outright downplaying or ignoring the positives, to me, is intellectually dishonest. Temper your expectations, be patient, and properly manage your resources. The game isn't dying. The game is not failing. It's only going to keep getting better and better. Now, in order to even out these videos, I know that people are still, regardless, they're going to have their disagreements with what I've said thus far, which is fair. I get that. I am going to be dropping a video as well, maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks from now, explaining the things that I do think need to be addressed immediately. But once I have the script for that down, once I have my ideas properly thought out and planned out, That video is going to be coming out as well. After this video, we're going to be dropping the Memory of Chaos run. It's completely sustainless. We're using older characters like Seele. We're using Himiko. We're going to be using Gallagher, going to be using Mose. I want people to understand the value of these characters. Look out for that. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more content. As always, this is all my humble opinion. You are free to disagree, and I am free to disagree with your disagreement. Have a good rest of your day. Your boy Ars is out.